Hi and welcome to Manny's Makings. Today we are going to start another loom project, and this time I'm going to use the easy loom, or the loom that you can pick up at Walmart. This is a wider version. Normally they're about this wide. They usually just have the one knob on each side. It's the same loom. I'm just going to work with a center peg instead. It makes no difference if your loom is narrow or wider. Yeah, so there's a couple things that you're going to need for this one. I'm going to use what they call a bead slide clasp. And what I did is I took some of the beads I'm going to be using and I put them on a pin, and then I checked to see how many fit in this tube. So this is the tube I'm going to be using. It's called the bead slide clasp. Now there's two types. There's this type that has the big hole, and there's a Delica one which has a really tiny hole. The Delica one will not work. So don't get yourself a Delica one. It's too small unless you're doing this with Delicas, which will change the hole dimensions. So I put them on a pin and I stuck them in here to see how many would fit in this slide clasp easily. You could just stack them in there, but this way they stayed on the needle and they were worked really well. And what I discovered was that if I'm using normal 11/0 seed beads, I could get 12. And if I was using delicate beads, I could get 13. So you can see there's a little bit of a difference. So I just listed them on top of my different clasp packages so that I knew when I got them, I figure that out and then, label them so that I know when I'm doing a project and I'm developing a pattern, how many beads will actually fit in this sucker. Because if you make your bracelet wider than the amount that will fit in the clasp that you're planning on using, it won't work. So you need yourself a couple of these bigger, wider slide clasps. If I remember, I'll try to put a link of where I purchased them, but I think I got them at Atomic Beads, but I'm not positive. And I know you can buy them. Beadsmith has them, so you can get them at Bead Holique, I believe, and stuff like that. So then I got some seed beads. I picked out some color tones that I liked. I had in mind to do a pattern. So this is the pattern. It's not completed yet. There's still some work I need to do on it. And sorry about the lines that you're seeing and everything, but there we go. It's just it's a feather and some beads and some more feathers and some little strings hanging off. And this will give me enough to do a normal size bracelet. But I want to do a double wrap because I want to teach you how to add more thread to your loom as you go, so that you can do a double wrap or a really longer piece. And I will just freeform the difference, and I'll sort of explain that a little bit as I go, what I'm actually doing. What you choose to do in your freeform part of it is up to you. And you can definitely, if you've seen my other looming videos, underneath there's links to places where you can get the charts to print out, and you can color chart your own and figure out how many beads work for you and how many beads wide work for your particular clasp that you want to use, and develop your own patterns, and you can make whatever you'd like. So these are the seed bead colors that I picked, and I will list them below under the show more button. And then you'll need a couple of other things because we need to make the string longer than the actual loom will allow us. I have a couple of clips, binder clips, and I just use them, and I'll show you, I just use them to help get my string set up for my warp threads. So we're going to also use today, and I don't have it out yet, but we're going to use, this is the wrong color, but basically I'm going to use the D in the CLon. It's CLon, but it's the D size CLon for my warp threads, and I'm going to use the same thing for my weft threads. So I'm going to use probably, because my background color is going to be this color here, which is, if you can see here, this is Apricot Pastel Opaque Tohos, and they're from Eureka Beads, but these are size 11s. I'm going to use this as my main sort of color of the background of everything. So I'm going to want lighter threads and lighter threads going through everything, so that on the outside you're not going to see as much. And I'm probably going to still double my threads on the outside, my warp threads on the outside, like I like to do. And we'll get going. So get your materials together, grab yourself a pattern. I'm hoping to have my patterns, or starting to get my patterns up in about a week or so. So from the date of this video, when it gets posted, you know, start checking if you want to download the particular pattern, you can do that. I'm going to put them up really cheap. They're just my own little doodlings that I like to have fun with. So yeah, get your beads together, get your supplies together, get your loom out, get your thread ready. And yeah, I'm going to use beading needles with this one, and size 10. I'm going to, you know, a 10 beading needle, and the long ones. So we'll get going. Okay. Okay, so just in case you're curious, I picked out this cream colored size D thread for my warp, and I can't set up my camera. I tried several times to be able to show you how to do this on a larger scale. So I'm going to explain how you do it and explain how you measure it, and then you're going to have to sort of figure that out on your own. So first of all, measurement. If you're doing a double wrap bracelet, you're going to need double the length that you would normally need. If you have a wrap bracelet at home already, or something that, you know, even a scarf or something you can wrap, you know, a thin piece of leather or something you can wrap around your wrist a couple of times, you'll get a measurement of what it's going to take to go around your wrist twice and come to the center. And then you're going to need to add at least a minimum of 6 inches. I'd say 8 inches to be safe. And the reason being is because we're going to need those threads to do things with them at the end. So we need at least that. So my safety zone is 3 times my bracelet. So I'm going to show you on a mini version on the ruler, but basically this is what you're going to do. You're going to put your binder clips, which you'll use the bigger ones, okay, and you're going to put them on the side of a desk, or between 2 chairs, on the tops of a chair. Like you can put them this way on the top of a chair. It doesn't really matter. Just find 2 places that you can spread the distance you need. And just, you know, take a measuring tape, centimeters, let's do inches. So, you know, if I needed it to be 7 inches, this is how big it would make it. But if I needed it to be a lot longer, then I just stick my stuff out the distance that I need it to be. So we're going to pretend this is the distance that I need, okay? Because what I'm going to need is threads on both ends that I could grab a hold of. I'm actually going to use some scrap wool. You can use a twist tie. You can use a little piece of painter's tape, whatever works for you, because you're going to have to grab a hold of the strings and then move these and get it out of the way. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to take whatever material you're using, and you can choose to tie it off to here, or because I'm using the mini version, I'm just going to tie it off. So normally what I do is I just tie it off on here, and that gives me a secure end so that when I'm running back and forth, you know, between the 2 chairs that I set up, I'm good. Okay, so I have this little piece here with the tail. It doesn't really matter. We're going to cut that off anyways, because we're going to have to cut it to free this whole thing. So then I'm just going to go around. You're going to go around 1 set of these hooks. Now, this is not really sturdy. These are cheap little binder clips. They don't hold up as well as the big ones do. So now if you have don't have binder clips, you can use a doorknob and some other space that's the right distance, or, you know, 2 kitchen cupboards that are open, that, you know, the distance between the cupboards, between the door handles and the cupboards are right. Anything that you can slip it off of. So you have to be able to slip this off. So you have to slip it off when you're done. So if you can't slip it off, then it won't work. So jerry rig whatever you need to do. I'm just showing you what I do. So if I just move my camera just a smidge. Okay, if this was my edge of my desk, and my desk is really thick, so I can't put it on there. I put them on the side like this of my desk. Okay, and then I go from one, and as you can see, even this is just on my mat. It's holding pretty good. If it's actually, my desk is like this thick, so I can't put the binder clips over it. But if it wasn't that thick, you could put the binder clips over most kitchen tables, and they're usually long enough, that kind of stuff. 3 times your bracelet length, okay? That's the big thing. So I just jerry-rigged this as like a little stand so I could hold the ruler upright. Okay, so you're just going to go around and around. Now you're going to count. Um, each time you go with the thread, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So each time you get to an end, 6. So depending on how many you need, you just keep counting. So if my pattern's 12 wide, so I need 12 plus 3 because I have to add the extras on the outside plus the extra on the, okay, see if I can explain this to you. Okay, so this is just a bigger version of my bead pattern, okay? So I have 12 beads wide. I need 1 between each one of these, right? And then I need 2 on the outside and 2 on this side. So I would need 11 between them, 12, 13, 14, 15. So I would need 15 wraps that I would have to go around. So whatever pattern you developed or you've downloaded or you found or you're going to do or you're going to create, that's what how you have to figure it out, is how many beads wide you're going to have it, and then figure it out from there. Okay, so I would just keep going like this until I have all the wraps that I need, and I'm going to have to do this on a bigger version for myself, and when I show you how to put it on the loom, which I'm going to do next. And then once I get it all there, they don't have to be super tight or anything because I'm not making warp at this point. I'm just getting the right measurements. I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to my piece of whatever, and I'm going to find the middle that's around this hook. There we go. So I found the middle where there's nothing crossing over, and I'm just going to stick this in, and I'm just going to put a loose, just a loose knot, nothing spectacular. I just want it to hold it so that when I take it off, I know that's where the center point is. And I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. So I would just go like this, and in this case it's a little harder. It's much easier when you do it on a big one. And you can go around both hooks if it makes it easier for you to find the center. Okay, get that in there, get in. There we go. Now this one has the tied off piece there, so I would actually have to clip that, but you get the idea. And I would tie this off, and then I would move this in like this so I can pull it off. And I have my end piece where it needs to be. Let's put this back where it's supposed to be. There we go. So now I know that this is the centerpiece here, and they're separated for me, and I'm ready to go. Okay, so I'll come back when I have that in legit size, and then I will show you how to put this on the loom. So you're going to have 2 straggly ends on this end. If you have an even bead count, if you don't have an even bead count, you're going to have 1 straggly on this end and 1 straggly on that end where it's cut off, and everything else is going to be tied into one of these. Okay. And gingerly just bring it back as a big piece. Just think of like a skein of yarn that goes around and around two arms. You could do that too with your kids. Get your kids to stand the right distance apart. That could be fun. Yeah, so get your thread ready, and then we'll come back and we'll put it on the loom, and I'll show you how to put thread that's too big for your loom on your loom. Thanks. Okay, so now we're ready for the setup. So I have my string, as you can see, my CLon. I have it separated. I'm getting caught on something, not good. Into 2. I have the one end here and the other one way over here. So I have the 2 piles. So I'm going to take the 1 pile, and I can even leave for the moment, the thread on there, whatever you want to call it. I have 1 loose thread here on this end because I needed actually an even number, which meant I ended on 2 different ends. So then I have all this extra thread. So what am I going to do with it? I'm not worried about where it's sitting here right now. I just want to put it on here, and I'm going to just loosen one of these off a little bit. Oh, there we go. And I'm going to twirl this around. And I don't know if you can see, but it's coming around the bottom. And I'm just laying the stuff around either side, and I'm just holding with my fingers. I'm laying with either side. Now you can do it this way or the other way. It doesn't really matter. And I'm trying to work my way till I get close to the other end. and I'm just going slowly. I could probably loosen it off a lot more and go a lot faster. You don't want your wire string, your loom threads to be on the actual post. They have to be on other sides of it. Okay, and now I can see the other end. Yay! So let's tighten this up a little bit so it's not spinning around everywhere. And I'm going to take it to the other end, and look at that. It'll fit on the other end. So in this case, I'm going to take this off because I'm just setting everything up. So I'm going to take that off, and I have the one that I made a loop to start with, and I know that loop's not going to work, so I'm just pulling that a little bit to give them a little more length because it's tighter than all the rest of them, and that's not good. So I'm just going to work on getting that looser. I should have done a slip knot. I didn't, so I can't undo it, which is not good. So next, don't do what I did. Doesn't really matter. I'm just going to wrap it around loosely. So I need to undo this one, untighten it, and I'm going to bring it so that it's adding some tension. And as you can see, this one's not very tight yet. This is the one that's loose, that's hanging. There's two loose ones here. And I've got myself tangled up here. Silly girl. Okay, so there's this one from this end, and the other one from the other end are the two loose ones that you can see sort of hanging out that are way too loose. And there we go. Pull that one and pull this one. These two loose ones will have to be tied down to the other end. So I get this where it's not super tight, but they're all sort of about the same tightness. Okay, I'm not going to tie these down yet because I got one more step to do, and that is to spread my strings, my warp threads. So I'm going to put 2 in the first one. And these ones are kind of tangly, so I'm going to actually just take my things and I'm going to try to untangle them a little bit so they're not all twisted together before I start. And you can start on this end or this end. I could have wrapped it around this end first and started it at, let's say, the bottom. It doesn't matter which way you use this loom. So you could start here and this could be your bottom, and then you could work your way up. Or if you work from top down, this could be your top and you work your way down. That's the joy of this kind of loom, is that you have a lot of freedom. So basically I'm going to stick 2 and then 1 between each one, going all the way across. Okay, as you can see, the one end's completed and I need to follow these through. So all I do is just take and I follow it through, and I've tightened this up a little bit. So now I have a little bit of tension, pretty close to the tension that I'm going to need, just so that it helps me to make sure I set this up really well. So I'm just going to follow each of the threads down. Don't worry if they're tangled down here. That's a non-issue, because as you go, they'll find their space, and if you have to move them, you can. So I'm just going to continue to set this up on the loom, and I'll be back when I get that done. Okay, so I've got my warp threads on. It's nice and tight. I'm ready to start weaving. I have all my excess down at this end and the non-excess on this end, but that gives me enough space to finish off the ends that I'm going to need to finish them before I put them in the slide tube clasp. So I'm going to, in this case, I'm probably going to work this way. So I'm going to flip my loom around because I like to work from bottom up. It's just how I work. Everybody has their own preference. So, you know, these are just the extra ones I tied off. I just made a slip knot and then put them around the edge, this, I can't see that piece here. On this one here, I just made a slip knot, and before I tightened it and put it on there, and that way she's good to go. So I have a pattern here. Now this pattern is for a normal bracelet. So you could make a single with this or double with this or whatever. So I need to figure out some things. When you do a wrap bracelet, what ends up happening is it wraps around. Let me just show you this one. Okay, so this is a triple wrap, but it wraps around. Okay, and you have, this is where my button goes through, so it wraps around. So you only see like a section on the top here, right? So if I was to say, okay, this is the bottom of my bracelet, if I put my clasp here, I'm only going to see this section right in here. So I have to make some choices about what I want to see up top. Because I'm making this a double wrap, I could put my pattern, this particular piece of the pattern, anywhere I want, or I could chop up pieces of the pattern. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a few rows, enough that it's going to go from here to here. So probably 5 or 6 rows of just plain cream color. And then I'm going to start in on my pattern. And what's going to happen is you're going to get some of the feather and some of the bead on the top end. And this is going to wrap around the back end. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue my pattern, repeating these 2 feathers again and again until I have them up to the other side. So when they do the second wrap, the feathers will come around the second wrap. And then I will finish this and then do just the cream color to the end. So you can take and chop up pieces of a pattern that you have. If it's geometric, it's a little harder, but you could choose to start and stop your pattern where you want if you're doing a double wrap. You could just do the pattern the way it is, and you could choose to do, you know, just stripes for the second one so that it's completely different looking, and I may actually end up finishing it with stripes on the last one. I need to go as I go. It's a creative process for me, and I'm hoping it is for you, and that you sort of play with it and let your heart and your spirit speak to you about what needs to happen. So I'm going to start this, and as I said, I'm going to start with a few rows of cream first, because I just want to shift my pattern just slightly. Yeah, it's just the way that I want to do it. So I got my beading needle, which is a normal length beading needle. I've got my thread on it already, and it's been waxed. And I'm going to start just like I always do, which is to do nothing. I'm not going to tie it off. I'm not going to do whatever. I always finish my end afterwards. And I don't need to leave enough for a weft thread. So I just need some beads. And I know mine is 12 wide. So I'm just going to put some beads out on my board. And I'm just going to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And yes, I did double check that I had the right amount of holes up top here. So as you can see, my beads and my thread are fairly close in color. Now I'm going to readjust my camera because I'm going to have to lower it and everything so you can see, and I'm going to show you how I actually put the beads on, but I'm just going to start them down here near the bottom somewhere. I've got myself an extra whole braid, 7.5 inches extra, so I can go 3.5 inches or so from here, and if I needed to, felt that it was a little too short, I could add more length. And I also have the clasp to figure into the puzzle, and then I'll show you how I start these beads. Okay, so I'm ready to start my beads. I've got my camera a little closer so you can see. So basically I need to take my beads. I have got my tail thread here. I'm going to leave enough, so 6 inches or so, 7 inches or so of, and I've got a wingspan of thread on my needle. So just so you know, if you see, this is a lot narrower. So if you're using delicates, it's even more narrow. It's going to need to pull itself in. So I'm not going to start right at the bottom. I will move it to the bottom. I'm going to bring it up a little bit. So this is my bottom here. See that? You can see the coils at the bottom there. I'm not going to start right there because the spacing isn't correct with the coils. It never is. And that can lead to some frustration. So my first couple of rows while I'm establishing, I'm going to start up here and then I'll slide it down closer to that piece. So all I'm going to do is try to lay 1 bead between each thread, except for there's 2 on the outside of each one. And it may or may not go easily for you. And this is me doing it first take, not like 10 takes later. Okay, I want you to see the reality of what it's like to do this stuff. So then I'm going to scrape the top of my beads. I'm bringing my thread is underneath. and I'm bringing it across the top of my beads, across the top of my beads, across the top of my beads. I'm making sure I'm not catching that other thread. So then I let go because I have these secured, and so I can put these back where they need to be. Okay. And the setup row always takes the longest. First 2 rows always takes the longest. I still have, whoops, my thread, and I just pulled more than I need there. So I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to put it through. And I'll usually tend to take my thumb and hold it, or I can go like this and hold it. I've got some wax on it, so it's giving me some resistance there. Okay. So, and as you can see, these will slide quite easily on here. And I can't tighten it that much yet because, although it's come in some, because I only have the one passive thread. So remember, I like to take my tail thread and bring it up the side, or I can weave it in, and I'm going to weave it in afterwards. So you have a choice there on how you do that. I just want you to see both ways. So I'm going to pick another 12 beads. I don't know if you can see me picking them up. All right. It's being persnickety. 5, 6. Come on, find a hole. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I do much better with shorter needles. I don't know why. But, oh well. So I'm going to put pass my thread underneath. Pass my thread underneath. So that I have my beads coming up from underneath. Make sure my tail thread's out of the way. As I said, everything moves really easily now, and I want it to. It means I haven't caught any threads, and it makes me happy. So then again, I need to place 1 bead between each. Look at that. And I'm using my finger as a holder to hold them up and pushing some pressure from underneath to hold them up. And I know you're going, wow, that's so far away from the other ones. Don't worry, it won't be for very long. So I'm just sliding my needle across the top of my beads, making sure I can see my needle between each, over top of those. And again, I'm going to pull my needle through. Okay, so I have 2 rows now. So I can start to cinch up, and I'm gonna grab both of these here, and I'm going to pull and cinch up a little bit. See, now I can start to lay them in a nice neat row. So you can see they're both laying side by side, really nice and neat. Everything's happy. So at this point, I'm going to do 1 more row, and then I'm going to slide these down. Okay, so we'll do 1 more row together, and you slide them down. So they're that far from where I need them to be. I'm going to have to move them. So I have to be very careful I'm not catching any threads or causing any knots. And again, this time they stay in much closer. So I'm going to put my finger underneath, and I'm pushing from underneath. Every time I bring my thread underneath, pick up my beads, and then I have to go back across the top. And I want to make sure I don't catch any of those warp threads. I'm just skimming the top of those beads. Okay, and then you can hold the beads in place if you want, and you just give them all a slight snug up. So I have enough now that this will establish the pattern. So I'm going to take this and move this down so you can see, and I'm going to push. Now one of the things came out of place, so I just have to move this over. And that happens in this one is because this particular thread, this warp thread, is not as tight as the rest. So when I pulled, it cinched it up a bit. There we go. So I'm just going to hold onto that down here. And I'm going to just move these slowly down the thread. Now when you're using the Bead Loom, which I'm going to show you later, you're going to need to do this too. So being able to do this, and you know what? It looks like I caught, see this here, how it's going funky here? That means I caught a warp thread. So that means I need to back out. So I'm going to pull this up. Yep, I caught a warp thread. If you catch a warp thread, it's the death of you. So I'm going to pull my needle off. So none of us are perfect. And I want you to see that this is the journey. All I'm trying to do now is get the thread that I put in there that's caught through the warp thread. And I'm going to pull that thread back out. Yep, see, that caught the warp thread. That's not a good thing because it'll weaken the warp thread. So you don't want to have a problem there. I'm going to put my needle back on, put this back on. So I'm going to fast forward through this because you don't need to watch me put the needle back on and put the thing back. Okay, so I'm moving them again. As you can see, it's not doing anything funky with the threads. So if it's doing funky stuff, that usually tells you there's a problem. Okay, and if there's a problem, then you need to fix the problem before you get going. All right, so I have everything here. I have it snugged off, and when I'm done, I'll be able to snug off this bottom end a little bit more to sort of make it the same, or I could just leave it up a little bit. Either way, you can do whatever you choose to do. Some people put a popsicle stick or something there to give you a straight edge. You can use, you know, anything that will give you a straight edge to sort of bring your beads together and make them happy. So now I'm going to continue to loom, and I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to do my pattern, and I'm going to continue doing it, add my pattern in once I get a couple more rows, probably do about 3 more rows, and then I'll start my pattern. I'm going to continue to loom, and I'm going to loom this whole piece, and when I get to the place where I need to extend it, I will show you where I'm at, and I will show you what that looks like when I need to extend it. So I'm back, and I've gotten you know, enough done that I need to move this now on my loom so that I can continue to loom and continue my piece. And I told you I would be back when I got to that point. A couple of things I discovered. This is the pattern I developed. So I need to change the pattern. And, you know, by actually working it out, and that's part of the process of developing patterns, is you have to actually try them. So I'm going to go down to 1 bead here. I find it too long, and the pattern right now includes the stripe, and I will get rid of the stripe. That will be instructions if you want to lengthen it, because it's actually too long of a pattern. It's going to work fine in this double wrap situation, but for a normal bracelet, if you want to do a 7-inch bracelet, this is 7.5 inches of pattern. It will be by the time it's done. So that's too long. There's no way to modify it enough to make it work for somebody who may want a smaller pattern, or, you know, just a little piece that they can then, you know, work for themselves. So it's, as I said, this will be up on my Etsy store eventually, you know, as soon as I get it worked out, and this is part of the process. So you have your loom. This is the end with a lesser amount of thread on it. This is the end that I wrapped extra thread on it. Okay, so I have my needle. I sort of have to get out of the way. You can see I have my beads that I'm working with. So the first thing I've got to do, and I know this is farther away, but to show you the whole loom so you get the idea, is I have to be out farther, and I'm sorry. So I just took this and pushed up so that you can see I'm moving it. It's no longer in the teeth. I'm going to have to move it again, but it just releases some of the tension there. That's number 1. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to take it and take it out of the teeth. And it just lets it relax just a little bit. I will have to reorganize those, but that's okay. So the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to release one of these screws just a little bit. Now you can see it. See how it's moving? I'm pulling. Okay, I'm going to do it back up again. And then I'm going to take this one and loosen it off if it'll let me. It's the joys of these particular looms. They're a little persnickety sometimes. It's not just you. There we go. And I'm going to tighten. So, and then I'm going to loosen. And then I'm going to loosen this off, and I'm going to tighten. And as you can see, I've gotten the beads now to the end here where they're going to go over the piece. So I'm going to continue this process, and I can go a little faster if I want. The thing is that if I go faster, I'm going to make more of a mess of these threads, and I'm going to have to sort them out a lot more. It's up to you. I've just undone both of them now. where they're looser, and I'm doing them together. There we go. That one does not want to sit down in the little spots for it, but see how I'm just taking it over top. Okay, and I'm going to continue because there's a moment where it gets fun. It's not hurting my weaving any, and when I take it off the loom, you know, you can see this is my weaving, it's fine, and when I take it off the loom, I'm going to be able to you know, massage it and make sure it's okay. So this is where it gets fun. So I need to loosen it enough that I can get all of this to one side. See, I'm taking it to the one side of this knob because I don't want my beadwork to be running across this peg. So if you have one center peg, you're going to have to shove it over to one side just a little bit. And I'm going to continue to do this. So you can see I brought it down, and I'm bringing it down, and I'm continuing to bring it down, and I just completely lost my other end. So I'm going to have to really do a lot of work, and it's because I'm trying to make sure you guys can see it on the camera. When you do this at home, you don't have to lose your other end. Okay, and I'm going to bring this down quite a bit because I still have a lot to work, so I'm good there. So let's tighten this one end up. So let's say this happens to you. Look, this is my other piece. It's hanging out on this other end here, and it's not even attached to the loom anymore. Okay, so there's a couple things I can do. Let me move this across my beads without scattering them all. There's a couple things I can do here, and I leave my mistakes on here and things that happen to me like this because in real life, and maybe I'm preaching to the choir, and for those of you who think that everything should be perfect on YouTube videos, please find someone else to watch because I don't want to be perfect. I want to be who I am, and I want to be real. And that realness is what 99.9% of the people out there are, as far as things you're going to run into and things that you're going to have problems with. So please, please, please accept the fact that you're going to run into things. There's no perfect formula I can give you that you're never going to run into a problem. What makes you good at what you do is figuring out solutions to your problems. Okay? So I'm going to unwind this a little bit and make sure it's nice and, you know, I'm going to try to tighten it up a little bit. And because I moved this one to this side of that little knobby, I'm moving most of my threads to that side. Since it's completely off my loom now, it doesn't hurt me to do that at this point. This is that extra thread in the bottom. And I'm bringing it back up, and I'm just tightening as I go a little bit, as far as like bringing it around the spool. Now I'm going to sort out my threads, and I'm literally going to have to take my tweezers and follow it up from my work and go, this is my first two threads, and I'm going to put them over here. And I'm literally going to do that with each of my threads. I'm just going to follow my threads up. And some of them are going to be twisted around each other, and that's okay. And I may have to tighten it. I'm holding the tension on this while I'm doing this. So there's my first two. And I'm going to continue to do that with each one of them until I get it set back up. And when I do, I'm just going to tighten this down so that this is nice and tight in there and everything's nice and tight again. And then I can continue on with my work. And as you can see, my beads are resting across this. It's not going to hurt my beading. And my beads are wrapped nicely around this, and there's no big bump in the middle. The bump's over here on the back side. And it's not digging into my beads or scraping my beads or hurting anything. And all of this is going to be absolutely fine. Okay. Now, I talked about that I was going to go on with a pattern, a different pattern, or do something different. So I've actually decided I'm actually going to do just a random pattern of lines in these colors for the second row. And I can't do a chevron because I have an even number of beads. So if you have an even number of beads, you can't have a point that comes to the middle. I could do a point that comes off to one side and then a point that comes off to the other side. Play with that a little bit if you wanted to. So you make, you know, if let's say there was 6 beads, you could make bead number 2 the center, and then bead number 2 from the other side the center, you know, or bead number 3 and bead number 3, or bead number, you know, you could play in and out with those beads. So whatever you want to do is up to you. The other thing is you can actually take your 2 pieces and split them and make 2 singles. So I could take one and turn it into, you know, a black with the copper in it stripe with the copper running down the middle, and this other one I could do, you know, the turquoise with the copper running down the middle. So you don't have to always go across all of your threads. If you don't want your whole piece, it will be this wide on the second one, but it would have a split effect on the second one if you actually split the threads. And you just divide your threads in half and work the one half and work the other half separately with their own threads and their, you know, your own needle, and you just work what you want for the length you want, work the other one the length you want. So you can play. I could do an odd number here and then leave myself, you know, what's left over here and do a skinny one. So that's part of the joy of looming, is that you have such versatility available to you on what you can do. And I know a lot of new people to looming are absolutely terrified of getting it wrong and absolutely terrified. They want to do these beautiful, intricate patterns, and that's awesome. Go for it. The worst case scenario, it's beads that you can recover and thread that's wasted that you can chuck in the garbage. It's worst case scenario, you absolutely hate it and you take it apart. That's the worst case. You've lost a little bit of your time, but you've learned a ton in the process. Best case scenario, you come up with new things and new ways of thinking about things that wasn't drilled into you that there's only one right way. There's a bazillion right ways. What's right for you is the right way. What helps you to create and get good tension and get, you know, things that look good, that you're happy with, that you love, is what counts. And I know that we have a tendency, and I just actually was listening to a podcast that talked about it, that we have a tendency as makers and creators to compare ourselves to others, but others also compare us to others. And it's hard because we compare ourselves to others and we think we're not as good, so therefore we shouldn't. The thing is that number one, those people didn't start out that way. And if they did, they were truly, you know, blessed and already have a gift. That's not the rule for the majority. The second one is that you have your own unique voice that's different. My voice is different than other voices that are on this, you know, in YouTube. And the people who watch me are okay with my voice. And the people who don't watch me or don't like me, that's fine. They need another voice that speaks to them. And that's what's so great about this medium, is that it allows us to share our own voices, and those who that resonates with can then, you know, continue to watch and share with that voice and add their own voices to the choir. And it becomes this, you know, wonderful community of people who share together. So I'm going to continue on with this, and I will come back when I've worked out. I'm going to continue beading until I have the length that I need minus the clasp length. Okay, so I got all my looming done, and I did play around with this other side. I did some plain striping for a little while, and then I decided I wanted to split it up into 3 pieces, and then I have plain striping again. So I'm finishing with plain striping, and all I did was just have some fun with, I used a certain amount of threads, would bring my, you know, needle between and go back and forth just like the normal looming, just only on a certain amount of threads. And so I, you know, I came up one, back down another, and then back up, and then I went across and across and across to finish it off. I've already woven in my ends, so I've gone back and forth a couple of times in the end here, and you will lose the last row of beading. Will get put inside of those sliders. So on both ends, you'll lose the last row of beading. So it's time to release it from the loom. Yay. So I do need enough on this end to be able to tie them together without making it difficult for me. And since I have thread left over here, I don't have to make it difficult for me. I just loosen this up. There we go. Undo this a bit. I want to give myself as much as I can. And as you can see, I have leftover thread. I did 15 inches of beading. So I'm going to leave the threads nice and long. This is all garbage, what's left on the loom. And obviously this one can be taken off pretty simply as well. And again, I'm going to just pull it off. This all pulls off the end pretty well. I may have to cut the one thread there where I tied it on, and I'll cut it off later. Okay, so I've got this nice long piece of looming. Now this could be used, you know, really long for hat band. This isn't quite long enough for a hat band, but if you look at it on my wrist, I definitely have pretty well enough to do a double. I need to finish the ends and put some chain on there, you know, to make some chain on there. And this is kind of fun that this kind of moves around, so it looks like I have a multi-wrap bracelet on. Yep, and as I said earlier in the video, I'll edit this because I need to change sort of how it comes out. So one of the things that people often have is things will get all bunched up and kind of funny, and this is from it being around the bottom. So if that happens, I just take my looming and I just run my thumb on it like this, and I'm just petting my looming. I'm putting a little bit of pressure on it. You can see the bottom's popping up, and it's going to slide it down a little bit on the threads, but that's okay. That'll loosen up your looming, and I would normally let this rest when I cut it off. I would let it rest for 24 hours overnight anyways, and that would allow these threads here, my warp threads, to, if they're going to shrink at all, to shrink before I finish it off. So I know I'm good. But the basis of this video is to show you how to finish the ends. So to do a loom piece and to finish the ends. We're almost done, yay! Okay, so I got my glue, my E6000, I got my plastic bag, I got my stick. I actually did the other end already, so you don't have to wait 4 hours for me to do that. So I have an end, and you have all these warp threads. I'm going to show you this way of finishing it. There's other ways of finishing it, okay? So I have all these threads, and you have the two outside warp threads. So if I go like this, you can see I have the two outside warp threads here, and then I have, you know, threads going across it, and then two outside warp threads there. I don't want these two outside warp threads to be knotted on the outside. When I'm knotting, I'm going to pull them in towards the center. And I just wanted to show you that so that those of you who can't see as well, or this doesn't work from really far away. There's my... So I just tend to use my tweezers just to separate the threads out. So I'm going to take the first 3 threads, and I'm going to treat those two warp threads on the outside as one thread. I'm going to pretend it's one thread. Okay, so I'm going to take and you can do overhand knot or square knot. It doesn't really matter. So basically it's just right over left, or whatever that one was. And then I pull it down, and when I pull it down, I want to pull it down so that it pulls the knot towards the inside, and I want to show you. Whoops. See how the knot's that way? When I do the other half of the knot, it'll stay there. So that the knot sitting, I don't want the knot sitting on the outside of that bead, okay? And you don't want to yank it really tight. As you notice, the knot wasn't super tight, and the reason is because if you do it too tight, you can actually, because these are your warp threads, you can actually pull your warp threads and end up tightening your whole piece up. And you just let it relax. So I'm just making it happy, and then I've knotted those 3, so I need to move them out of the way, and you can use whatever you want, pair of pliers, anything to weigh the thread down, just to get it out of your way. And then I grab the next 2 threads, and it's much easier if you have something, you know, to get it out of your way. Now I know I'm going to run into a problem when I get to the other end, but I'm just going to keep going, and then I'll show you the problem when I get to the other end. So I'm going to just make a knot, and this again, I'm not pulling, I'm bringing it snug up to the beads, but I'm not, after I get it to the beads, I'm not yanking any further, because I don't want to pull the threads. Those are the threads that run along here, and if I pull them, it'll scrunch my beads up, and I don't want scrunchy beads. Nobody wants a scrunchy beads. And you've put hours of work into this at this point, making a bracelet, and you know, double wrapped bracelet or a headband or whatever you're going to use it for. And you definitely don't want to have to worry about, and you can do it without the, see, I can grab the 2 threads without it. I'm just going to pull this up a little bit so you can see. And I know my fingers are in the way of the beads, but let's see if we can get it. So I go one way. And if you're ever not sure, you can just when you let go of the threads, they kind of tell you which way they want to go next. Come on, get in there. There we go. So I pulled it, but not super tight, and then I'm just pulling it till the knot makes the knot. See if I can zoom in a little here for you. Okay. So you can see that I've made the 3 knots, and they're sitting just with, you know, they're sitting on the top of the beads, but close, but not like I'm not pulling those threads at all. Just getting that out of the way, and I'm just using that as a weight. Okay, so if you know anything about math, you've got 2 threads on the outside and this one. If I tie those together, and I tie these 2 together, and guess what I have in the middle? I have 3. So I have a spot where I have 1 extra. So I could leave it till I get out here, but then that risks having too much knots near the outside, and I have to slide this through that tube, through this tube here. It's got to go through that hole. So I don't want to do that. I'm going to put it in the middle. So I'm going to, you know, stop for a second, count what, if you have 24 of those, you need to, you know, count, figure out what's left when you get partway through. It doesn't matter if it's in the middle, it could be, you know, closer to the one side or the other side. The point is that I realized, oops, I have an odd number. So I'm going to tie these 3 together like they're 1. And I'm just doing it in the middle. Now I wouldn't tie 5 together, although you could, because I would worry about it fitting in the tube. And if you're using a heavier thread, those tubes, you know, my number 10 crochet cotton, number 20 crochet cotton, I've used CLon, will fit in those tubes if I tie it off the knots decently. So there's that knot. Get that out of the way. And next knot, I'm getting there. And if you wanted to do an overhand knot, I'll show you. So you just take your 2 threads and you treat them like this. And with the shorter threads, for me, it's a little more complicated. I'm going to grab those 2 threads there. And then this is where I would use my tweezers. I grab a hold of this end, grab my tweezers, pull that all the way up. And this is harder to control the amount of pull you get on the warp threads. I usually put my finger on top at that point, and then I pull down. And as you can see, it leaves more space. See how there's the knots way up here? So that's a bit of a problem. So I have to do it again. Or sometimes you can do this. Let's see if this will work. And I can pull these 2 threads this way. There, tightened up my knot close enough that I'm happy. Okay, so then I have the last 3. So I prefer the square knot, but if you're using heavier material, it might be easier to do the overhand knot. Again, it's not like, this isn't life-threatening stuff. I know finishing is really important, and getting your finishing nice so that it looks professional is really important, but how you get it to look nice and how you get there. Now, again, I want to pull those towards this direction. And I'm going to tie them again. What goes on underneath the car, or underneath the bumpers, or behind closed doors, because no one's ever going to see it, matters not, as long as it's strong and sturdy and going to hold up, and you're not going to get returns if you're selling your stuff. It's going to be, the people are going to be happy with the product that they get. How you tie your knots is not relevant, because they're never going to see them. As long as they're tied, you're good. So then you take put it on, I'm just taking my threads and I'm putting them, flattening them out so I have access to my knots. I'm putting it on a baggie, and I just throw something on top of it for weight so that they don't spoing all over. And then I get my E6000 out. This is where it can start to get a little bit mucky, but what I want to accomplish is to make sure I cover every one of those knots really well with glue. I don't need to cover the first beads because I'm going to do that inside the tube. So I'm getting a big gob of glue, and then I'm going across these knots. Don't worry about if you get the threads farther down. What you worry about is not getting the knots. So just make sure you get the knots. So obviously that's close to the beads. Get a little tiny bit on the beads. No one's going to see it. It's going to be inside this wonderful closure. Okay, so I'm just putting this on. Now I tend to give myself a couple of minutes to let it get sort of tacky, at least 10-15 minutes. And then I would take more glue. I'm just going to put the lid on this baby. And I need to get glue down inside of here. Okay, so I would let it dry longer than that. Okay, and when you cut this at this point, you might get a little glue in your scissors, but it's okay. You can get it off later. I would give it 10 minutes or so just to let it set up a little bit. For the sake of the video, I'm not going to. I know that this knot comes out here, that knot's a little farther away, so I'm not going to cut right up against the beads. I'm going to come out just a little bit, and I could leave little hairies. It's okay. And I'm going to come across and cut my threads. Okay, this is garbage. And this glue, I need the glue here, so let's just move that out of the way. Okay, so I have this. It's still sticky, so I'm going to put it here. And I'm going to take my glue that I took out and stuck on my baggie, and I'm going to put it on a wire. Now, when you squish your beads in, your beads are going to force the glue down towards the bottom. I'm going to try to get a little in the bottom, but you're going to end up actually with more glue in the bottom than you want. And you don't want it to squish out. So I'm looking at the crack because I don't necessarily want to rub glue in the crack because it'll seep out. So I'm just circling around inside, spreading the glue. Let's grab some more. I'm going to come up a little farther, and I'm spreading glue. See how you can see, I don't know if you can see me moving around, but I'm moving around inside. That's what I'm doing. Sorry about the fuzziness. That's what happens when I play with my camera. If I just leave it where it is, it's happy, everybody's happy, and then as soon as I move it, for some reason it seems to mess up. So I have sticky glue inside there. I have a pile of beads with sticky glue. This is where if you have trouble with sticky glue, you could get glue on you. But don't worry about it, it's not the end of the world. So I take it, and I take it in one hand. See if I can do this up here, if it'll focus for me. Yeah. And I want to slide. So this has the biggest, this end has the most mucky. So I'm going to start from that end first. It doesn't really matter. And I'm going to slide that little groove between the two rows of beads. So see how the groove, see if I can get it to focus for you. I'm sliding the beads, that one end row of beads, into that groove. Yeah. Remind me not to come in that way. Okay, so as I get to the other end, 11 beads probably would have been perfect. 12 is actually just pushing it. I'm pushing the limit. There's two things I need to do because I did 12. It's tight. So I need to get this, make sure this last bead sitting inside that tube and that last string sitting in that side of that tube. And I'm sticking any threads or anything that might be sticking up inside of there. See how that bead's in there now? And any threads that might be sticking up in there are stuck down in there. I just don't want them hanging out up top. I'm going to take this and I'm going to start the bend. Use any pair of pliers to do that. Doesn't really matter. You can, use any plier you want. Push against. Now, if I push against that way, what I find it happens is I end up sliding it off the beads. So I can take this like this and push against there. Or, and as you can see, I got it pretty tight just doing that. There we go. So they're pretty well closed and it's in there. So I have this piece and it has a finish that's sort of all like tarnished up, and that's what it's supposed to be like. So I'm happy with that. So I have the two ends on my thing. So I made myself with some 5mm 18 gauge jump rings. I made myself some chain. I just put one through here and then I just kept putting them together. And then I have to put the closure on the other end. And I don't have any copper closure, so I'm going to use this. That's a brass closure for now. And once I get new copper ones, I'll use that one. So I just want to make sure something, because I didn't check to see if this fits. Oh, it does, it fits, yay. So I need a jump ring on there, so I've already got it on there, so I might as well close it on there. So I'm going to take my jump ring. Now, some people like just one jump ring between the end and... I'm just checking to see if that it's right. Oh, okay. I have to work underneath a magnifying glass when I do this, but looks like I got it. Yes, I did. Okay. So some people only like that and then the jump ring attached. I actually like to be able to maneuver my jump ring, get my finger in there and have some space to sort of hold on to some chain before I have that bar. So I like a couple of rings. So I'm going to put this one in here since I have all open jump rings. And this particular gauge jump ring is pretty tight on these particular findings. You just have to wiggle it a little bit. It might help if I open the jump ring a bit more. And these are really work hardened jump rings. I can't do it with my fingers, which means they're going to hold up. Okay. As you all know, if you've watched my other videos, jump rings and me are not best friends, but that's okay. I still know how to get them open and closed. That's what matters. And then I'm going to take and put the end on and the what do you call it, clasp on that had the jump ring. So I'm just, okay, you want to be smart, putting the two jump rings on basically, and I'm going to close that. So I end up with 3 jump rings. Looks like I'm okay. And as you notice, I was feeling that because my eyes aren't the greatest. So I have this wonderful bracelet. Now, this chain affords you to put a charm. I have a really nice butterfly charm I might use on here, but I want to show you what this looks like. So you can wear it a couple of ways. You can wear it so that it goes over top like this, or you can wear it like this. Doesn't matter. There's no right way, wrong way, upside down, backwards, whatever. Okay, I like it like this better, and I've got it on backwards because I have to close this, and I might be able to close it this way. And I gave myself lots of chain, and partly because as I get older, there we go. So there's my bracelet. You have the 2 with the feathers, and I've got it on a little bit loose right now. I've got these 3 strands here. You can't see the feathers as much as I like. That's why I said I have to take one of the bead sections out. Right, it's too long. But yeah, so there's the lovely bracelet. I love it. As far as even the width is fine. And it looks like you have, you know, they move around, and so you have all this bead weaving. And multi-layers of bead weaving is cool, I guess. That's what I've been told. It's starting to get cooler. So either one of these could be a single bracelet. This could be a bracelet by itself. Right? You could have this as a bracelet. You could have this as a bracelet. So, you know, you can make this as long or as short as you want. And again, all I did with this one, if I can get it so it focuses, I had my threads. So I had a space for 12 beads. So there's 1, 2, 3. The 4th one is the hole. 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. And I just did them in a pattern, whatever I felt like, just different patterns. So I did some straight lines to start with, and then I just worked with the threads that would fit, that would be one on the outside of this bead, one in the middle, one in the middle, and then 2 on the outside because this was an outside edge. And I just wove back and forth just like I would with a bunch. And then when I got to the top, I knew how many rows there were. I started back. I actually did this whole line, as you can see. I did a whole line to set the sort of spacing. And then I brought my needle back, and then I started working here. And instead of, I didn't work all the way across all the beads, I brought my needle up between the beads like this. to, you know, actually I went this way, back down, put the beads on the thread, brought it up, pushed against it, put my needle back up through this section here, which we didn't have any beads on it yet, those you know, few warp threads that were there, and then came back across again. So, and I just worked this just like as if it was separately on the loom all by itself till I met back down with the other one. And because I'd set this row up here, I knew how many rows it would take to do it. And then I came back up this way with this one. So whatever threads I had left, I had 2 bead space. So I had 2, 1, 2, and then 2 on the outside. So I had 3 threads basically left. I came back up with the 3 threads. So that's how you get the multi-woven, because I know a lot of people like that. So you could make one bracelet that looks like it's a bunch of bracelets and it's only one. And then when I came back up, I came back here, and then I started, so my needle and thread was coming back out of this side of the loom again, which allowed me to take it underneath my loom, put beads on it, come back through this way, take it under my loom, put beads on it, come back this way. So you get the idea, right? So yeah, cool, huh? So this is my double wrapped loom bracelet. I hope you enjoyed this video, that you learned something. You learned about using slide clasp and how easy they are, and it's the best thing since sliced bread. And you have to make sure you don't get the delicate ones. The delicate ones are really tiny and will only fit delicate beads. You do the exact same process with the delicate beads, but there's a smidge of space left for delicas, and they don't fit the normal size beads plus the knots. So if maybe you had a bracelet at 15 O's, it might work, but it does definitely, delicate ones do not work for the 11 O's. So just so you know. And yeah, and if I had used, instead of Toho's, if I had used the Miyuki rounds, then I would, not Miyuki rounds, yeah, not Delicas, the other ones, yeah, Miyuki's. If I'd use them instead, let's see what are they called. It's gonna bug me now. Yeah, Miyuki seed beads, just the regular Miyuki 11 O's. They're not as wide, so they would have, the 12 would have fit perfectly in here without it being a little tiny smidgy widgy going in at the edge. So yeah, your choice, your colors, your fun. I will once I'm going to do some editing of this pattern because I don't like it and it's too long. I'm going to put it up super cheap on my Etsy store for you, and if you look in the show more notes below, there'll be a coupon code you can apply, so you're going to be able to get it for like $2. So if you want the pattern, you could get it for like $2. Everybody else is going to pay a little more than that once I get it all edited up and cleaned up. So give it about a week from the day that this is posted, and then you can check the store and it should be up if you actually want the feathered pattern. And again, it's going to be with just 1 bead in it, and I'm going to make it shorter, cleaned it up some. I found some areas I don't like there's a spot here that I didn't realize I had as a loner. So there's some things like that that I need to fix up on the pattern, but I'm really happy. For me, it's for me. I'm going to use this for me. And if you want, I could probably work this pattern up too. It's not going to have the instructions. You're going to have to see the video to be able to know how to do it. But you can, if you want, I'll just hold this up here and you can just see what I did. So I had 5 beads wide. First row was 2 of the cream, 1 of the blue, 2 of the cream. The next row was 1 and then 3 of the color and then 1. And then this one here was just 3 beads wide, so I just put the brass colored ones in the center. And then this one's here, I just sort of did a rotating. So I started with the blue and then the black, and then I picked up the black and then the bronze. Sorry, it's because of all these things on my mat. And then the bronze and the white, and the white, and you know what I'm saying, and the clay color, sorry, terracotta. So I just kept whatever I finished with last, I picked up first, and then I went to the next color. And I just have my beads in a circle and just picked up the next color, so it ends up looking like a little bit of a stripey thing. Easiest way to do stripes in the world. So yeah, and I think that would make a really cool bracelet as well. So take care. I hope you learned something, and keep on making from Manny's Makings. Bye.